The unbridled rage of Ginryusai Yamamoto, the King of Hell. There is no moment I awaited more for this arc than Yamamoto arriving to the battlefield filled with a visceral rage that makes you question if the entire Soul Society would be consumed in his fiery wrath. Proclaiming he'd slaughter each and every one of the Quincy with his own hands, it sent shivers down my spine because of the very emotional weight those words carry. And now facing the threat of the world he's sworn to protect being pillaged and invaded, Yamamoto stands as the bastion of hope for Soul Society, their own trump card. This episode for me was the best of the 1000-Year Blood War so far, and spoiler alert, this won't be the last time I say this as time goes on. Episode 5 with an incredible title within Wrath as a Lightning, it was flawless. Shiro Sagisu put together one of the best scored anime episodes of our modern time, and it enhances the brutally dark and intense theme this Vasion reflects. Blood and death everywhere in the Sarate, Ichigo helpless to protect, Bankai stolen, so much emotional weight rests on this episode, and I'm so glad it was adapted perfectly. Witnessing Ichigo within Quilgi's shrift within the jail, it reinstilled the greatest fear Ichigo has, the inability to protect those he cares for. As Ichigo swings his sword against the barrier, we can see his expression go continually darker and darker while realizing his Getsuga Tensho won't be enough to break this jail. I was brought back to this quote when watching this scene within the quote, "There is nothing we can do, so I wish for strength. If I cannot protect them from the wheel, then give me a strong blade and enough strength to shatter fate." Ichigo wants strength at all cost, not for the sake of his own glory. Instead, he wants to be strong enough to protect those he loves. This blade he asked for can shatter fate itself, even the jail. With the last scene we see of Ichigo, we can see this yellow light emanate from around him with his promise that he'll protect them no matter what. Despite fear and helplessness in his eyes, his will to fulfill this promise allows him to keep trying no matter it seeming impossible. One of the reasons Ichigo is such a compelling character to me is because of scenes like this. He feels human. He faces fear, helplessness, despair, yet he keeps trying. He pushes forward in the face of such crippling emotions and shows what it means to be truly courageous. However, within this episode, Asnot taught us something, and that is that not all fear is capable of being overcome through pure willpower alone. Well, at least that's what he says. However, Byakuya had some differing opinions despite his defeat. The concept that Asnot introduces within true fear being without cause or reason, it's a really fascinating idea. Fear traditionally can be dealt with through experience in trials and tribulation, as Byakuya emphasizes, but that's due to these traditional fears being something that can be overcome and protected from. However, within Byakuya facing true fear without cause, it was truly a terrifying scene to watch our best girl Rukia have her face melted off and zombified, and we see Byakuya truly experience fear. Fear without reason. My god, the studio went so hard for this scene, and I'm impressed they made it so horrifying. I loved through this interaction we see these little moments showing how unfamiliar Byakuya is with fear. Hell, he's even confused as to why his hands are shaking while gripping his sword. It's easy to forget that each of the captains for the most part have been captains for centuries, so moments like this remind us that an emotion such as fear due to centuries of experience, it's a completely foreign emotion. Or as Asnot says, it's instinct. It's a primordial instinct meant to keep us alive, and despite the experience Byakuya possesses, this instinct still persists. For a brief second, it seemed like Byakuya would be able to overcome Asnot, but as we soon learn, his strength isn't enough. As a side note though, we finally get to see Rukia only for her to get bodied in battle and zombified within Asnot's fear-inducing vision. It's tragic for our best girl, but any screen time Rukia gets, I'll forever be happy. The first half of this episode was so brutal for our Shinigami. Byakuya's damn near dismemberment from his own Bankai was even more gut-wrenching in the anime, and is juxtaposed with Rukia and Renji both also getting mollywopped. Did anyone actually think Renji would get a W? For a brief moment, it seemed that despite all the current defeats we just witnessed, with our berserker Kenpachi arriving, that perhaps there was a glimmer of hope. After all, with 3 Stern Ritter on his shoulder, it gave us high hopes for Kenpachi to put up a fight versus the leader of the Quincy, but as OP villains do, Kenpachi is struck down with ease. I was unsure whether to laugh or be hyped up when Kenpachi discussed how he had to fight a copy of himself and subsequently go stronger during this battle to defeat himself. 2 Kenpachis running around, that sounds genuinely terrifying, but what a busted ability from Stern Ritter Y, but an even more busted Zenkai boost from our very own Kenpachi. Through the dialogue from Jugrum and our mustache man, we learned that Kenpachi was one of the war threats, which leaves us 3 more to determine. If any of you watching are anime onlys, please let me know in the comment section below your guesses on the 3 remaining war threats. With Kenpachi being off-screened, all hope seems lost. But thankfully, like within all things in life, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, or rather, a blazing fire. Yamamoto's arrival on screen to save Shuhei was beyond perfect as he's met with the very man who killed his lieutenant. The 1000-Year Blood War solidified Yamamoto to me as one of the greatest characters of this story, and that sure as hell saying something. With so many brilliantly designed and well-written characters, it's almost impossible to narrow a list of favorites down to just a few. However, within this arc, Yamamoto became one of my favorite characters and the unquestionable most badass old man in anime and manga. With Yamamoto met with Driscoll the Overkill, we see the Bankai of Sasakibe that was stolen, and now we see it used against Yamamoto. The amount of balls it takes to be that disrespectful is ridiculous, and it makes what happens to Driscoll all the more enjoyable. Sasakibe's Bankai Koko Gonro Riku, it's visually beautiful and one of the most interesting Bankai in the series. Through the flashback that ensues, we slowly understand why we don't see more of this Bankai until now. Sasakibe long ago wanted to be Yamamoto's right-hand man, not a student, but an individual who could compensate for Yamamoto where he needed assistance. Yamamoto never lacked in strength or ability, so Sasakibe never needed to activate his Bankai and fight on his behalf. He served the role as the right hand of Yamamoto to a T. Despite obtaining a Bankai he spent a millennium mastering, he never had use for it during his time as lieutenant. This self-restraint and dedication in Yamamoto is so reflective of the kind of person Sasakibe was. A selfless individual devoted to his role as the right hand of the commander of the Gote 13. As a young man, Sasakibe went so far as to train for an entire month to learn Bankai just for the approval of Yamamoto, and under instruction of Yamamoto, he used it against him. The Bankai of Sasakibe was so powerful it left a scar on Yamamoto's head, literally changing his name. Yet Sasakibe was so reverent of Yamamoto he refused to call him by that name, and instead, Yamamoto changed his name to Ginryusai to let Sasakibe call him by a proper name. This backstory gives us the much-needed history that explains why Yamamoto held such a quiet and all-consuming rage that was displayed during Chojiro's funeral. As Yamamoto takes on the full brunt of Driscoll's attempt of using Chojiro's Bankai, we get to witness, in my opinion, the greatest moment of this episode. Yamamoto calls up to Chojiro saying he can feel his frustration, that this petty attempt at emulating his Bankai is infuriating, and with this, Yamamoto is finally able to give a proper send-off to Chojiro as he splits Driscoll in two and is consumed by fire. This all-consuming fire surrounding Yamamoto is so poignant for his final goodbye to his best friend, and it relights the desire to fight within the Gote. A true leader under all circumstances can instill pride and hope within his or her people, and Yamamoto's sheer presence fighting is enough to have those even on the brink of death once more pick up their swords to fight. The very nature of Yamamoto's spirit energy is terrifying. The air becomes arid, the skin of all those surrounding starts to tinge due to the heat, his very will and spirit is unrivaled. There's a reason he's reigned as the commander of the Gote for over 1,000 years. It's because there is no Shinigami stronger than the King of Hell Yamamoto. This episode leaves us on a cliffhanger with the post-credit scene of Yamamoto arriving before the Quincy King with his name finally revealed. Yuhabak, which is another translation of Jehovah. This dude literally has a god complex. The next episode to follow will contain my favorite fight within the entire final arc, and there is no doubt this episode will go down as one of the best of the entire series. The King of Hell Ginryusai Yamamoto versus Yuhabak, the King of the Quincy. Next Monday can't come any sooner. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode discussion, please do consider dropping a subscription. It means the world to me. Given my excitement about Yamamoto, be on the lookout as well for a future video breaking down his character and why exactly I call him the epithet King of Hell. Most importantly though, let me know in the comment section below your favorite moment of this episode. Mine undoubtedly was the glorious entrance of Yamamoto, and I'm excited to see what yours was. This has been hiXtrah, and as always, be greedier, and I will catch you all next time.